Okay, we are back. Give a couple minutes, folks, to join back in. Yeah, but that's what I'm gonna do this weekend. Marinate. All right, so we are at Acts 9 and 1. All right, so now we're about to get into more about Paul. Huh?
Oh yeah.
It went? I didn't get it. He just sent it? Oh, from before. Yeah, he didn't send it yet. All right, so Acts 9 and 1. It says, and Saul, yet breathing out threatenings and slaughter against the disciples of the Lord, went unto the high priest, right? And desired of him letters to Damascus to the synagogues, that if he found any of this way, whether they were men or women, he might bring them bound unto Jerusalem. So we read that in the last chapter to kind of personify what was read in the beginning of the 8th chapter of what Saul was doing and how he was given license and authority by the chief priest, by the high priest, to go out and apprehend anybody that was following after Yahushua and then bound them in prison, which sometimes in turn they would go and be stoned or killed, right? Or beaten in other cases, right? So I'll read it again. And Saul, yet breathing out threatenings and slaughter against the disciples of the Lord, went unto the high priest. So you know how sometimes you go out, if you're going out to teach, or you in a synagogue somewhere, you'll have someone storm the synagogue or come in front of the camp, and they just hurling out all kind of accusations, false accusations, and cursing you out and damning you and different things of that nature. So that's what Saul was doing. It says, and desired of him letters to Damascus to the synagogues, that if he found any of this way, whether they were men or women, he might bring them bound unto Jerusalem. So he's going to Damascus, and as he's going on this journey, he's getting the authority to grab people up on this road to Damascus, right? So it's like the cops. When the cops go anywhere, they got to go get a subpoena, right, from the court, from the judge, that says you can go now and bust up into this business or bust up in somebody's house, right? You got to have that subpoena. If you don't have that subpoena, lawfully, you're not supposed to be able to go into anyone's premise, right? But he got this.
Yeah, because the thinking about how in the Old Testament we had, the way of life, right? How we were stuff that and getting to the priest and the temple and so on and so forth. So since Christ came on the scene as the Messiah, it's different from what we were, living and so on and so forth. So when Christ came on, some of us start to go to, Christ's way. Then the priests, they were against, some of them even were against Christ.
Right.
So it was like a different way, a different way. So Paul was in that, with the chief priests and so on and so forth.
Right. Verse 3, it says, and as he journeyed, he came near Damascus, and suddenly there shined round about him a light from heaven. So as he's on his journey, on the road, a light shone from heaven and cast upon Saul, right? And he fell to the earth, and he heard a voice saying unto him, Saul, Saul, why persecutest thou me, right? So now, if you got your Bibles with red letters, you know that this is Yahushua speaking. to Saul on the road. And his question was, Saul, Saul, why persecutest thou me? Right? So now how is Yahushua asking Paul why he's persecuting him? At this time, where's Yahushua? Or what had happened to Yahushua? He had already been crucified and taken up and was seated and standing at the right hand of the Father. So now Yahushua comes back from the heavens, most likely in a chariot or whatever, and he casts this light upon Saul, and he's asking, why are you persecuting me? Right? But now Paul was literally persecuting who? The actual church, the people, the apostles, not Yahushua, but the actual apostles. So we'll go to Matthew 25. Matthew 25. And 40. So this is 8 and this is 9. So this is for verse 4. So this is Matthew's 25 and 40. So it says, and the king shall answer and say unto them, inasmuch as ye have done it unto one of the least of these my brethren, ye have done it unto me. Right? So what is he talking about? When you read up further, it's talking about when the disciples went out and fed, clothed, anyone who needed anything that they were lacking. And Yahushua says, if you go out and do it to them, the least of them, you've done the same thing unto me. I don't physically have to have been there, but if you do it into any of those that is mine, it's almost the same as if you've done it unto me. Verse 41, then shall he say also unto them on the left hand, depart from me, ye cursed, into everlasting fire, prepared for the devils and his angels. For I was an hungry, and ye gave me no meat. I was thirsty, and ye gave me no drink. I was a stranger, and you took me not in. Naked, and ye clothed me not. Sick and in prison, and ye visited me not. Then shall they also answer him, saying, Lord, when saw we thee an hungered, or thirst, or a stranger, or naked, or sick, or in prison, and we did not minister unto thee? Then shall he answer them, saying, verily I say unto you, inasmuch as ye did it not to one of the least of these, ye did it not to me. Right? So now when you go and you do something, give a blessing to one of those that's of Yahushua, is as if you bless Yahushua. But when you go and you curse or you punish those that's of Yahushua, it's like you're actually cursing and punishing Yahushua himself. So that's what Yahushua is asking Saul. Saul, Saul, why persecutest thou me? Why are you condemning me? Why are you throwing me in prison? Why are you having me killed over and over and over? Because you've done it to them, you've done it to Yahushua, right? Ephesians 5. I stopped at 45. Now I'm going to Ephesians 5 and 30. So it reads, for we are members of his body and of his flesh and of his bones, right? So when you are part of the body, any part of your body that feels pain or has gone through something, guess what? The rest of the body knows about it. The rest of the body has to suffer for it, right? Because if your leg is messed up or your arm is messed up, something else has to now take up the weight of that, right? To now balance everything out because you lack this. If your eyesight goes away, guess what has to happen? Your hearing then has to increase. But once your eyesight is back, now your hearing can go back to its normal level. So everything that's a part of the body gets affected when something is taken away or when it's now blessed, right? So that's what the Spirit teaches us when it pertains to the body of Christ. So that's what Paul didn't realize. This is what Yahushua now is checking them on. So go back to Acts 9:4 again. It says, and he fell to the earth and heard a voice saying unto him, Saul, Saul, why persecutest thou me? And he said, who art thou, Lord? And the Lord said, I am Jesus, whom thou persecutest. It is hard for thee to kick against the pricks, right? So now Saul is asking who it is that now has persecuted, speaking to him that he persecuted. And Yahushua acknowledges and says, it's me, Jesus, right? The one you've been persecuting. And it's hard for you to kick against the pricks, right? What does it mean when it says kick against the pricks? So now that comes from old terminology when you are dealing with cattle or the animals. To tend them to go where they want, you got a stick, and it has like a what they call a gourd or whatever at the end of it. So you now tap and have the animal go a certain way, but you jabbing them to go there, right? And sometimes the animal will buck up and kick, but just because the animal's doing that, you got a long stick, you can still prick them. As much as they kick, you're gonna keep pricking. So they're kicking their feet to no avail. It's not gonna go their way, right? So it's the same thing with Saul. He's kicking against the pricks of Yahushua, and Yahushua is going to keep coming at him unless he now stops and realizes that you can't stop the will of the Most High, right? You can't stop it. As much as you want to throw these men in prison, you making it even better, right? Because these men are going to glory in themselves being thrown in prison for my name's sake. Right? Stephen, even though he was stoned, he's going to get an even greater name and glory based on what he laid his life down for. So you're fighting a losing battle. Go to Acts, the 5th chapter. Acts 5 and 37. Acts 5 and 37. We have verse 5. So this is back when the apostles was going out teaching that you had the Jews who wanted to apprehend and kill apostles, right? So then Gamaliel came and gave them some wise counsel. But I'm going to start at verse 37. It says, and after this man rose up, Judas of Galilee, in the days of taxing, and drew away much people after him. He also perished, and all, even as many as obeyed him, were dispersed. So that's the thinking, that when these people come up doing certain things, if you leave it alone, if it ain't of righteousness, it's going to fade away, right? It says, and now I say unto you, refrain from these men and let them alone. For if this counsel or this work be of men, it will come to naught. If it's a carnal endeavor, if it's not predicated on the Most High's will, it's going to fade away, right? Y'all don't have to do anything. But verse 39, if it be of God, ye cannot overthrow it, lest haply ye be found even to fight against God. So that's what Gamaliel, the Pharisee, told the men, the Jews that was trying to kill the prophets, the apostles at that time. He cautioned them, listen, you trying to go and stunt these men growth. If these men be about the Most High's work, man, you fighting against God now. You can't stop that. So it's the same thing. Now here it is. Saul was one of the main advocates against the children of the followers after Yahushua, the apostles. He was the main one. And now here it is. Yahushua is asking him, why are you kicking against the pricks? Why are you persecuting me? Right? So it's now realizing that you can't win against Yahushua. You can't win against the Most High. Right? So that's what the rhetorical question is to Saul here. So back to Acts 9 and 6. So now after Yahushua gave him that question and gave him that retort, now let's see what Paul's response is. It says in verse 6, and he, trembling and astonished, said, Lord, what wilt thou have me to do? Right? So now here it is, after he realizes and got this answer, who is this that's talking to me? Who is this that's asking me, Saul, Saul, why are you kicking against the pricks? And then when Yahushua says it's me, now you got to sit back and say, hold on. This man died. They killed him. How is he back again, now speaking to me from the heavens, right? So now when Saul heard that, what happened? He got afraid and was surprised, like, what? Now his whole disposition has now changed, because what he thought was over and done with, and he was just going out there now and apprehending those who are still his followers and throw them into prison to be killed. He realizes that this guy's still alive, even though he was dead and crucified. So now he's taken back and it's changed his whole thought process. It says, what wilt thou have me to do? And the Lord said unto him, arise and go into the city, and it shall be told thee what thou must do. And the men which journeyed with him stood speechless, hearing a voice, but seeing no man. So Saul wasn't by himself. At this time, he was still called Saul. He wasn't by himself. He had other people, because like Yahweh Kana mentioned earlier, when Saul went into these people's houses and he went and abducted these people, he wasn't by himself, right? He had a squadron sometimes with him that rode with him. He got the paperwork to say he can go and do this, but then he had people with him. So now those that was with him, they hearing Yahushua, but they not seeing nobody as well, right? Go to Acts 22. Come on.
Yeah. Paul just submit completely.
Mm-hmm. Acts 22. And verse 6. So now this is Paul recounting this situation later on to the Jews, right? So this is Acts 22 and 6. And it came to pass that as I made my journey and was come nigh unto Damascus about noon, suddenly there shone from heaven a great light round about me. So now this is at noonday in the daytime. So in the daytime, as he's going his journey, another bright light came and shone around Saul, right? So one would have to think that this was some form of a chariot or something that came as Yahushua is speaking to him, right? It says, verse 7, and I fell unto the ground, and I heard a voice saying unto me, Saul, Saul, why persecutest thou me? And I answered, who art thou, Lord? And he said unto me, I am Jesus of Nazareth, whom thou persecutest. And they that were with me saw indeed the light and were afraid, but they heard not the voice of him that spake to me. So now they with Saul, they see the light, but the conversation that Yahushua is having with Saul, nobody else hears it. They see the light, but they don't see, they don't hear the voice being spoken to Saul, giving him the instruction. Acts 22, and I read from 6 down to 9 so far. And then reading on verse 10, it says, and I said, what shall I do, Lord? And the Lord said unto me, arise and go into Damascus, and there shall be told of thee all the things which are appointed for thee to do. Right? So that's let you know, because you don't get that here, that they saw the light, but they didn't see or hear anything, right? So now that's what you link up here in verse 7, the same thing. So verse 8, and Saul arose from the earth, and when his eyes were open, he saw no man, but they led him by the hand and brought him into Damascus. And he was 3 days without sight, and neither did eat nor drink. All right. So after that confrontation with Yahushua, they took him up, led him into the city, and he was still blinded. Right. And he didn't eat anything for the span of 3 days. He's now still waiting on the instruction from Yahushua, because that's what was told. He needed to go into Damascus. Verse It was a city. Yeah, it was a city. Verse 10, and there was a certain disciple at Damascus named Ananias. And to him said the Lord in a vision, Ananias. And he said, behold, I am here, Lord. And the Lord said unto him, arise and go into the street which is called Straight, and inquire of the house of Judas for one called Saul of Tarsus. For behold, he prayeth, and have seen in a vision a man named Ananias coming in and putting his hand on him that he might receive his sight. So now Yahushua now explains to Ananias that while Saul is sitting in this man Judas' house, he's praying, right? But not only is he praying, but now Yahushua has just showed him a vision that this man named Ananias is going to come in there and heal you of your blindness. Right? So now it's now showing you setting up this man to come and meet him. And now it's going to serve two purposes as we're going to read. Verse 13. Then Ananias answered, Lord, I have heard by many of this man, how much evil he have done to thy saints at Jerusalem. And here he hath authority from the chief priest to bind all that call on thy name. So Ananias is one who knows Saul's reputation. So now he's getting the instruction to go into the street named Straight and then inquire of a man named Judas that he has a person there named Saul, right? And Ananias is like, hold on, why am I going to that guy? Christ, don't you know that this guy, he has persecuted the church or anybody calling on him. And in this city right now, he got authority to continue to do that. Why you want to send me there? I'm one of his own. I'm one of the disciples, the followers. So why would I want to go there and then put myself in jeopardy to be apprehended by Saul and his goons, right? Verse 15, but the Lord said unto him, go thy way, for he is a chosen vessel unto me, to bear my name before the Gentiles and kings and the children of Israel. For I will show him how great things he must suffer for my name's sake, right? So Yahushua is revealing to Ananias that even though he did all that, he's now about to go and do other things, great things for my name's sake. Before he was against my name, now he's going to go bearing my name and speak to different people, right, throughout these different areas. So now, with the 15th verse, let's go to Romans. Chapter 15. I'm sorry, Romans chapter 11, not 15. Romans chapter 11. And 13. Because we just read that the Yahushua said that he had to go and bear his name before the Gentiles, kings, and the children of Israel, right? So it says Romans 11:13, for I speak to you Gentiles, inasmuch as I am the apostle of the Gentiles, I magnify mine office. Right? Remember, we read last chapter in 1 Corinthians 12, that there are different operations, different administrations, right? Certain people are put in position to deal with certain things. Paul is saying here, I am an apostle of the Gentiles. I magnify mine office. These Gentiles was Israelites who was following after Gentile customs, following after Gentile names. Right? So he now was given that authority by Yahushua based on what we just read. Let's go to Galatians, the first chapter. Book of Galatians, chapter 1. Galatians chapter 1 and verse 15. Yahweh Kanan, if you could read that. Galatians 1 and 15.
Galatians 1 and 15. But when it pleased God, who separated me from my mother's womb and called me by his grace
Keep going.
to reveal his son in me that I might preach him among the heathen. Immediately I conferred not with flesh and blood.
Right. So now he realized that they chose him. It was revealed in him, Yahushua, that he now had to go and preach to the heathen. Why was Paul set up to go and preach to the heathen? Jump to the 2nd chapter and the 7th verse. Galatians 2 and 7.
Galatians 2 and 7. But contrariwise, when they saw that the gospel of the uncircumcision was committed unto me, as the gospel of the circumcision was unto Peter.
Right. So the gospel or the good news of uncircumcision or of the uncircumcision was submitted to Paul, whereas the gospel of the circumcision was given to Peter. The circumcision was who?
Israelites in the truth, right?
The ones who knew that they was Jews, right? The ones who still was living in the land and still tried to keep the customs as what they know, following under the Pharisees and the Sadducees and the chief priests. Then you had the gospel of uncircumcision was what? What was the gospel of uncircumcision? Zakar.
Uncircumcision. These people who did not get circumcised.
Huh?
The people who did not get circumcised.
The people who did not get circumcised. What else?
And about they had like they went on and they going against what God said. God didn't get circumcised.
Go to the book of Maccabees, 1st Maccabees. First Maccabees, the 1st chapter and the 11th verse. First Maccabees 1 and 11. So this is page 114 in the red Bible. In the red Apocrypha. So it reads in First Maccabees 1 and 11. It says, in those days went there out of Israel wicked men who persuaded many, saying, let us go and make a covenant or an agreement with the heathen, the actual Greeks and other nations that are round about us. For since we departed from them, we have had much sorrow. Meaning, since we don't deal with them or we don't adjoin unto them, we have had much sorrow. Meaning, we don't get the same benefits as everybody. We don't get the same privileges. Since we now dealing with ourselves, things have gotten a little bit worse. But let us go join back with them, right? And what did that mean to join with them? Verse 12. So this device pleased them well. Then certain of the people were so forward herein that they went to the king, who gave them license to do after the ordinances of the heathen. Whereupon they built a place of exercise at Jerusalem according to the customs of the heathen, right? So now, how did they join in? They started to adapt their customs, right? The first thing we're reading about is what? The place of exercise or gymnasiums, right? Which in the beginning, back then, the Greek place of exercise was in the nude. You worked out, you exercised in the total nude. Somebody be like, nah, man. Yes, in the nude. The Olympics started out in the nude. So when they was out there throwing javelins and running and doing that, it started off, they was butt naked. How do you know even that's today? When you go look at the Greek architectures and the Greek statues, what do you see? They all naked. They didn't immortalize them by making them, and like that was just one thing, but now they got clothes on, and then no, that's how they always was. So they sculpted them how they normally act. So this is now something that Israel started to join themselves to do, to go out there and be naked. So if you now building the place of exercise like the Greeks, guess what you're going to do? You're going to be exercising like the Greeks, right? Naked. It says, verse 15, and made themselves uncircumcised and forsook the holy covenant and joined themselves to the heathen and was sold to do mischief. So how do you make yourself uncircumcised?
Follow by their laws.
Huh?
You had to follow by their laws.
When you had to follow behind their laws, right? Because the Most High tells you that we're supposed to circumcise the foreskin of our heart, which is our mind, right? How do we do that? By following after his commandments, abandoning your own wills and your own practices that's calling for man, but following after the Lord in truth and sincerity. But now when you join to the heathen, now you've made yourself uncircumcised. You've gone back on that, and now you're back at the bottom, mentally, spiritually. So that's how people made themselves uncircumcised during the times of the Greek Empire, the onset of the Greek Empire carrying over into the Roman Empire. So now when Paul says the gospel of circumcision was given to Peter, but the gospel of uncircumcision was given to him, means that these individuals, these people that carried throughout the different generations that had that same mentality, Paul now had to go and teach to them. Those who was following after the Greek customs, Paul had to go teach them. Those who had Greek names and was keeping Greek holidays and things, Paul and the men had to go and teach to them. Peter was not given that authority. He had to stay throughout Judea, Samaria, all those different regions where we were, he stayed there. But Paul was the main one that was sent out. All right. So that's what it's talking about when it goes to uncircumcision. Now, go back to Galatians 2. Galatians 2 and 7 again. Yahweh Kanan, Baba Kusha. Galatians 2 and 7, what you read?
Yeah, Galatians 2 and 7. But contrariwise, when they saw that the gospel of the uncircumcision was committed unto me.
Now we know what that gospel of uncircumcision meant. The gospel, the good news, the preaching of salvation to those who were following after the heathen. Read.
As the gospel of the circumcision was unto Peter.
So those who was following after the chief priests, the scribes and all of them that was still within the land, Peter and the other apostles was dealing with them. Read.
For verse 8, for he that wrought effectually in Peter to the apostleship of the circumcision, the same was mighty in me toward the Gentiles.
Right. So what work Peter was doing back home in Jerusalem and throughout the different regions, Yahushua was now increasing Paul to do the same great work to those who was scattered throughout the Gentiles. Read.
And when James, Cephas, and John, who seemed to be pillars, perceived the grace that was given unto me, they gave to me and Barnabas the right hands of fellowship, that we should go unto the heathen and they unto the circumcision. Right.
So now when these men, James, Cephas, or Simon, or Peter, and John, right? These were the main three that Yahushua had a close knit with. It says when those three realized that Paul was on the up and up, they said, you know what? Godspeed. You go and do what you do. We're going to stay here and do this. So Paul, remember, he wasn't brought up under those men. Everybody else that came in was brought up under Peter and the rest of the apostles that was around during the time of Yahushua. But Paul was not. Paul got the revelation directly from Yahushua. So that's why it's worded that way. He says, when James, Cephas, and John came, these men seemed to be the pillars. These seemed to be the ones that was running everything. And when they came to me, they seen that I was okay, that I was on point. They said, all right, we're going to stay here and handle this. You go out there and you handle that. Right? He's not, he's not different from us. He's preaching Yahushua. So that's what Yahushua had now given him the authority to do when he was now coming to Damascus. Go to Ephesians, 3rd chapter. Ephesians 3 and 7.
He said, whereof I was made a minister according to the gift of the grace of God given unto me by the effectual working of his power.
Mm-hmm.
Verse 8.
Mm-hmm.
Verse 8, unto me who am less than the least of all saints is this grace given, that I should preach among the Gentiles the unsearchable riches of Christ.
Right. So he was the one sent to preach the unsearchable riches, the mysteries about Yahushua and how it was now going to fall onto them. Read. 9.
And to make all men see what is the fellowship of the mystery which from the beginning of the world had been hid in God, who created all things by Jesus Christ.
Right. So this mystery that the uncircumcision, those who was going to fall away from the traditions, that this was going to be opened up unto them also, was all the way from the beginning. The Most High had already known and set this up from the beginning, but it was a mystery to the people. Everybody wouldn't see a mystery, or else it wouldn't be a mystery, right? A mystery now has to take someone or some group of persons to do due diligence to go out there and find the clues and the characteristics to reveal the mystery, to uncover the mystery. That has now been given directly to those who have been chosen by the Most High in Christ for them to see it and receive it. Read one more.
Verse 10.
Yep.
To the intent that now unto the principalities and powers in heavenly places might be known by the church the manifold wisdom of God. The
manifold wisdom of God. The many different layers or chambers that pertains to the wisdom of the Most High. That's what we have been showing throughout all these years, that now men and women have come into this truth, is to now show the wisdom of God that's been hid, right? How the earth was created, how the nations was created. That's why when you go to these other philosophies and doctrines, they don't have that wisdom. They don't understand how the earth was actually created, how long it took, right? How the earth was populated and through which men the Most High began to create nations in the earth. The laws that was given to one that wasn't given to another, and now what the course of the earth, how that would change and what that would mean to different time periods. The kingdoms that rose up out of the earth at different time periods and how that affected the Lord's chosen people. All of this is the many manifold levels and chambers of the Most High God. Right? Then they get into prophecies about things that didn't happen in their time that would happen later on. So all of this is what has now been revealed to the prophets and now is being shared to those who can receive it. It started with Peter, James, and John and the rest. They did that after Yahushua left with the rest of those throughout our homeland. But the other apostles, Barnabas and all of them, they left to go out to throughout the Asia Minor and other regions to get to those other Israelites who were scattered throughout. So now, that was that. Let's go back to Acts 9. Nine and 16. Actually, let me go back. Go to Acts 26, because we read Acts 9 and 6. But go to Acts 26. Go to Acts 26. Acts 26. Right? Because now what we read in Acts 9 and 6 was just a short synopsis of what actually happened, or a short synopsis of what was said, right? So in Acts 26 and verse 14, now Paul is going to give more clear understanding of what happened to him on the road to Damascus. So this is Acts 24:6. And 26:14. 26:14 throughout. So Acts 26:14 says, and when we were all fallen to the earth, Paul and the rest of those that was with him, I heard a voice speaking unto me and saying in the Hebrew tongue, right? So this wasn't spoken in Greek. This wasn't spoken in Latin. This was spoken in Hebrew by Yahushua coming from down from heaven to now have this interaction with Paul. Saul, Saul, why persecutest thou me? It is hard for thee to kick against the pricks. And I said, who art thou, Lord? And he said, I am Jesus, whom thou persecutest. But rise and stand upon thy feet, for I have appeared unto thee for this purpose, to make thee a minister and a witness, both of these things which thou hast seen, and of those things in the which I will appear unto thee, delivering thee from the people and from the Gentiles, unto whom now I send thee, to open their eyes and to turn them from darkness to light, and from the power of Satan unto God, that they may receive forgiveness of sins and inheritance among them which are sanctified by faith that is in me. So that was Saul's charge by Yahushua. We didn't read it that clearly in the 9th chapter, but now as you read on, Paul tells the story at different times to different people. And as he's telling the story, you get more and more information. Because sometimes that's it. I want to say human nature, but that's what man do. Sometimes you may come and somebody may ask you a question and you give the answer, right? You don't give everything, but you just give enough because maybe you're in a certain mood or that's what you just want to write down and bring forth. Then later on, he goes to someone else and then he reiterates what happened. And then he might just add a little bit more. But then now when you get to the 26th chapter, now he's standing in the front of the governments of the Romans. He's now going a little bit more and speaking more things and telling more information. Not that it didn't happen. It's just the fact that sometimes you only want to convey what you want to convey at that time, right? You don't always give everything. I sometimes get charged with that by my wife when she may ask me something, and depending on my mood, I'll give the answer, I give the information. And then later on, now when the situation presents itself, and now I'm inspired, now I'm in it. Now I'm going to go in and, oh yeah, it's just that and the third. And everybody's like, hold on, you didn't tell me that before. Yeah, I just didn't feel the urge to kind of go into detail. Now I'm going to go into detail. Not only do I did that and Saul did that, but you see that throughout the scriptures when you read precept upon precept. Sometimes at a certain point, they don't go into many details. Later on, the Most High and Yahushua will give you more clarity and more detail on it because sometimes certain things got to transpire, right? Certain events got to happen. So now when it's being spoken of, you revert back to that and then you add all that in the middle and you're like, oh, now it makes more sense of what information was held and now it was presented and now I fully understand it. Sometimes that happens.
Because like what you was saying the same thing, like the four gospels, right?
Mm-hmm.
A same account, same true, physical, account, but from different perspectives.
Right.
But it's all true because one might say this, one give it to more here and a little here, and it's all, align itself.
Mm-hmm. Con. So let's go back to Acts 9. We were at 16 now. It says, for I will show him how great things he must suffer for my name's sake. Right. So not only on that instance that Yahushua explained to Saul that he was going to have to go out and teach the Gentiles and do certain things, but he also showed him how he was going to have to suffer, right? That he was going to have to suffer. This wasn't going to be an easy road. So as much as Paul persecuted the church and now he was an advocate for Yahushua, he had a hard road. Paul's conversion into now being a disciple and apostle of Yahushua wasn't the easiest thing, right? He had to go through some things physically while him teaching, and then he had to put up with the rest of his brethren who didn't really believe he was who he is now. Same thing with this man Ananias, right? He was kind of hesitant and reluctant to want to go and deal with Paul until Yahushua had to convince him. Go to 2 Timothy's 3rd chapter. Second Timothy 3 and 10. This goes to verse 16. So 2 Timothy chapter 3, verse 10, it says, "But thou hast fully known my doctrine, manner of life, purpose, faith, long-suffering, charity, patience." Verse 11, "Persecutions, afflictions, which came unto me at Antioch, at Iconium, at Lystra. What persecutions I endured, but out of them all the Lord delivered me. Yeah, and all that will live godly in Christ Jesus shall suffer persecution," right? You cannot come here and not suffer for Yahushua's name. You're going to have to suffer some form of persecution that says, oh, you with him? You following after those brothers? You a part of that church? You wear that garment? You do this and that? Like all of, oh, you don't eat pork? What you this? What you better than? All these things in different forms of variations is going to come upon you, right? Sometimes the conversations become physical, right? I've heard brothers getting into fights, physical fist fights, because some people are being cut, and it's sometimes even with your own family members. But you will endure. You are given the ability to endure all that through Yahushua, right? He doesn't leave you out there on an island without giving you or providing you with some form of comfort to endure. All right. 2 Corinthians chapter 11 and 23. This again goes along with the suffering that he was going to have to deal with or endure laboring for Yahushua. So this is 2 Corinthians 11 and 23. It says, "Are they ministers of Christ? I speak as a fool. I am more. In labors more abundant, and stripes above measure, and prisons more frequent, and deaths oft," right? Because you had some of the people within the church, they started to get deceived by following after other men, thinking that these guys were men of the Lord, right? And not Paul and the rest of the apostles. So sometimes Paul had to boast about himself in comparison to these men, because these men weren't doing the same thing that Paul was doing for the church, laying down his life in the manner that he was doing. So I'll read it again. "Are they ministers of Christ? I speak as a fool. I am more. In labors more abundant, in stripes above measure, in prisons more frequent, in death often." So now when it even comes to this, sometimes you can go out there and labor and you may be killed. Yahushua can bring you right back, right? It's like, you know how you have people play a video game and you got like 3 lives, 4 lives, and you're running out there and all of a sudden you fall off the cliff, boom, you die. Boom, 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 you come right back and you're going again. So Yahushua and the Most High, like it's shown in the gospel in the Old Testament, can bring someone back to life, right? So Paul is going through all this. He's expounding all that what he has to have gone through for the church. Verse 24, "Of the Jews 5 times received I 40 stripes, save one." Listen, I got beat by my own people 5 times with 40 stripes for going out there doing what I'm teaching right now. "Thrice was I beaten with rods. Once was I stoned. Thrice I suffered shipwreck. A night and a day I have been in the deep, in journeyings often, in perils of water, in perils of robbers, in perils of my own countrymen, in perils by the heathen, in perils in the city, in perils in the wilderness, in perils in the sea, in perils among false brethren. So when you look at Paul, you see the letters that Paul wrote. He wrote a lot of letters, but in just short synopsis, if you was to walk in his shoes, most people, if they were to walk in Paul's shoes, would have gave up a long time ago. Gave up a long time ago, right? But he's now saying they're not laying down their lives like I've laid down my life. You know how many times I had to go through death? You know how many times I was beat? You know, listen, I was stuck out there in the deep for a day and a night. You read about Jonah, I was out there like that. So Paul is going through all of the things. I had to suffer perils from my own countrymen. I had to suffer from the heathen, right? So it's like today when you see it in the news and you saying, dang, man, these cops out here killing us like that. Some of them is the heathen. Some of them is our brothers, right? That we got to suffer unjust fates from them. Paul did all of that, went through all of that, endured all of that for the truth, right? These men that's going out here right now today, they wicked, right? We out here marching and protesting, granted, because they have been dealt with unjustly. But these individuals was all out wicked. They ain't out here advocating for Yahushua according to the truth. He was, right? Who are these guys? That's what Paul is saying. Who are these guys? I'm speaking as a fool. I'm speaking rhetorically. Let me know, because this is what I'm doing, right? Verse 27. In weariness and painfulness, in watchings often, in hunger and in thirst, in fastings often, in cold and in nakedness. Behold, those things that are without, that which cometh upon me daily, the care of all the churches. That's what he went through this for, to take care of the churches. So when you look at Paul, you can't look at, people want to always question Paul. Oh, Paul was this and Paul was that. You show me anybody that you know of outside of Yahushua during that time up until now, even today, you show me anybody that laid his life down like Paul did for the churches. Everybody want to condemn and criticize Paul. You tell me anybody who's doing what he just outlined right here for the care of the churches. And not only for the care of the churches, because when you read in other scriptures, he said, I didn't want nothing from them. He didn't ask a collection plate. He didn't say, hey, y'all, can y'all put me up in this nice house? Can you go buy me a car? Nothing. He wanted in return. He did that all out of the care and niceness of his own heart for the nation. He said, listen, if it all be, let me be separated from Christ, that everybody can be joined with him. I'll suffer. I'll be the scapegoat if it calls that we all going to rise up together. Who's doing that? Who has that in? What group of people is doing that? What? The Muslims? What? The Jehovah's? Who is doing that? None of them. For them to anybody to come and criticize what he was doing. That's what he's saying. That's when you read and he says, I boast the more. He's boasting about his afflictions. Not about that he could teach great. Not about that he healed so many people, right? Because he didn't want that attention. He wanted the attention to see, look how I'm suffering. If you really about this, come and walk in my shoes. All right. So now let's go back to Acts 9.
He was a tent maker too.
Huh?
He was Acts 18.
Con.
Yeah, so
that was his profession.
Yeah, he worked for his school. He worked to take care of himself.
Con, what was that the complete verse?
Oh, Acts 18.
Acts 18 and what?
Acts 18, 83.
When you find it, let me know. Yeah. All right, so back in Acts 9, and we have verse 17 now. It says, and Ananias went his way and entered into the house, and putting his hand on him, said, Brother Saul, the Lord, even Yahushua, that appeared unto thee in the way as thou camest, have sent me, that thou mightest receive thy sight and be filled with the Holy Ghost, right? So we're back in Acts 9 and 17. So now after Ananias now had his discussion with Yahushua and tempered his premonition about Saul and how he had been in the past, and he now had told Ananias that he knows you coming. This is what I told him, and he's waiting for you to come. So that's what he's now communicating to Saul when he comes into the room. He says again, brother Saul, the Lord, even Jesus that appeared unto thee in the way, has, as thou camest, have sent me that thou mightest receive thy sight. I'm going to take that blindness off of you and be filled with the Holy Ghost. I'm going to lay my hands on you, and you are not going to receive the gift of the Most High and Yahushua, right? Verse 18, and immediately there fell from his eyes as it had been scales, and he received sight forthwith and arose and was baptized, right? Giving more clarity on the preaching that he needed to do in Yahushua's name through Ananias. Verse 19, and when he had received meat, because remember, he had not eaten for 3 days, right? He had said it back in verse 9, and he was 3 days without sight and neither did eat nor drink. So he fasted for 3 days. So now in verse 19, and when he had received meat, he was strengthened, letting you know, of course, when you fast, you don't have this energy, you're not upbeat, right? Because you are now suppressing the carnal for the spiritual, right? And look how much spiritual things now Saul has now just been gifted with. It says, then was Saul certain days with the disciples which were at Damascus. So after all this happened, he stayed there with the disciples of Yahushua for several days. It doesn't give you an exact, but we know he was there for a period of time. Verse 20, and straightway he preached Christ in the synagogues, that he is the Son of God. So while he was there, after he was now going to receive the baptism, he now start going out there and teaching, right? He's going out there and teaching. Verse 21, but all that heard him were amazed and said, is not this he that destroyed them which called on the name in Jerusalem, on this name in Jerusalem, and came hither for that intent, that he might bring them bound unto the chief priests? So now those who were not there when Yahushua stopped him on the way, they were not a part of his crew. They didn't get this revelation from Yahushua like Ananias did. Everybody else is sitting back looking at him like, hold on, ain't this the same guy that was given license to come and bound anybody who spoke on Christ's name? Ain't he the one? They be like, yeah, that's him. Hold on, what's going on here, right? We know him. He has been got a reputation that precedes himself. And now he's in here speaking on the same name or advocating for the same name that he used to condemn everybody else. Verse 22, but Saul increased the more in strength and confounded the Jews which dwelt at Damascus, proving that this is very Christ, right? So now the rest of the Jews that was there are seeing Paul and they confused. They're like, hold on. I know who you are, but what you're saying is confusing me. So why are you sitting here talking about Christ? Why are you sitting here advocating and breaking down scriptures about Christ to me? That's what they was confused about, because before he was in league with them and went to go and persecute the church. Verse 23, and after that many days were fulfilled, the Jews took counsel to kill him, right? So now they're like, yo, I think this guy's converted, man. We got to get him out the way, right? The same way they thought to kill Yahushua and did, now they're saying, listen, we got to kill him. Look how fate has changed, because prior to this, that's what Paul was doing. He was going out and abducting and bounding the people so that they can be killed. Now he's an advocate for Christ. Now they're looking to kill him. They conspiring and coming up with a different counsel here and there on how they're going to take and kill him. Go to Acts, the 25th chapter. Okay.
Because the thing is that now Paul is by himself. He's not with a cohort. You know, he's not with all the people to persecute the church. He's by himself, standing by himself.
Yep.
So it's like they see him as a man not by himself. So they figure that they want to go and harm him or kill him, you know?
Yep. So Acts 25 and 1. So, everybody got it? So now Acts 25:1. Now when Festus was come into the province, after 3 days he ascended from Caesarea to Jerusalem. Then the high priest and the chief of the Jews informed him against Paul and besought him and desired favor against him that he would send for him to Jerusalem, lying wait in the way to kill him, right? So, yeah, they're realizing that now they're going to want to have Paul being transferred to go see Festus. So they're going to want to lie and wait along the way so that as he's been transferred, they can go and gain opportunity to go and kill Paul, right? But verse 4, but Festus answered that Paul should be kept at Caesarea and that he himself would depart shortly thither. So they wouldn't have needed to transfer him from Caesarea to Jerusalem and they can lie and wait on the way and get him. He's like, no, that's cool. Let him stay there and I'm going to come there and have inquisition of him. So they missed an opportunity to try to kill Paul, right? But this is what now is happening, just being an apostle of Yahushua and speaking the name. Because again, when you look at it from a political perspective, I'm using a political perspective loosely. When you have someone like that, like Yahushua, when he first started, who went and spoke against the common good of what everybody saw, what the government and what the Pharisees and them was preaching, he spoke about the kingdom. Now, speaking about the kingdom is starting to build up the people to believe and follow a certain thing, to get themselves prepared for what's to come. Right? So now you're not following what they're doing. You're not keeping their traditions. You're not going over there and doing those things. So now you're starting to separate. And not only do you start to separate, it wouldn't been a thing, but the numbers began to increase and increase and increase and increase. And it got bigger and bigger and bigger. Right? So now once it began to get so big, it becomes a threat. It becomes a threat, especially number one, to the Jews that's at Jerusalem, the leaders. Because their position now is being compromised, right? If you have a organization, a group that's now becoming the predominant factor and you now become the minority, you're going to be pushed out of the way. And now when you pushed out of the way, these chief priests and high priests get a lot of favors from the Romans. They're given a lot of privileges from the Romans. So now when the Romans look out and see that, hey, your power and your authority is now diminished. Why am I giving you this privilege and this position? I can move you out the way. So they felt threatened by Yahushua. They felt threatened by the apostles that they would continue to preach this thing, even though it was for their benefit. But they didn't believe it. They didn't believe on him. So they just saw Christ as an adversary. They saw the apostles as adversaries, threatening their position, and they had to get removed. Right? The Most High had it worked intricately so that even as they're preaching, they're thinking it's blasphemous that they're talking about this man, that he's the son of God. But he was for their salvation and they didn't see it. Didn't understand it. So now,
John 11 and 50.
John 11 and 50.
Yeah, because when it was, things in himself, it says, nor consider that it's expedient for us that one man should die for the people, and that the whole nation perish not. So the thing about Christ die, and everybody else to perish.
Right. So now back in Acts 9. We have verse 25 now. Salak 24. Acts 9:24, it says, but their laying await was known of Saul, and they watched the gates day and night to kill him, right? So he knew what they was after. He knew what they was trying to do, right? So they had an eye on him. He had an eye on them, right?
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Yeah, even for Acts 23 and 12. Did you read it already?
No.
Acts 23 and 12. Yeah, Acts 23 and 12. And when it was day, certain of the Jews banded together and bound themselves under a curse, saying that they would neither eat nor drink till they have killed Paul. Verse 13, and they were more than 40 which had made this conspiracy.
Mm-hmm.
So they wanted to kill him, and they, bound themselves with this oath because they couldn't touch Paul.
You ain't finishing.
Oh. Verse 14, and they came to the chief priests and elders and said, we have bound ourselves under a great curse, that we will eat nothing until we have slain Paul.
Mm-hmm.
Now therefore, he with the council signified to the chief captain that he bring him down unto you tomorrow, as though he would inquire something more perfectly concerning him, and we, or ever he come near, are ready to kill him.
Right. So they like, look, we entered into an oath that we wouldn't eat anything until we kill him. Right now, I know your position. So this is what you got to do. You got to go and say you got a question for him, and that he now needs to come to you. So that now in his coming and journeying over to you, we can lie in wait and then go get him and kill him. Right? That's what so this is everything is always, everybody's waiting for Paul to be transferred from place to place. And along the road, along the way, they can get him. Right? But read.
Verse 16, and when Paul's sister's son heard of their lying in wait, he went and entered into the castle and told Paul.
Right. So now Paul's nephew heard about what was going on, and he came and told Paul. So now Paul was privy to it. So he was like, oh, okay, go get these men and tell them what you just told me, so that they now understand what's going on. Right? There's a conspiracy going on here. And you read further on down what the discussion is with Paul. We read that later on. But they always was lying in wait to get Paul. But just the same way as Yahushua, right? Paul was not going to die like he's done until that time came to pass, because he had to fulfill the mission of Yahushua. That's initially what Yahushua told him. You got to go and preach my name in front of Gentiles, in front of kings, and in front of your own people. But you're going to suffer a lot. And that's what he just read in Corinthians. He went through a whole lot of suffering, right? Now, one would say maybe that's because of what he had done and persecuting the church in that way, that he had to go through that road. That's speculatory. I don't know. We don't know that that's the case. It doesn't say. But he went through that, right? And still kept the charge. So now back in Acts 9 and 25. So I'm going to start at 24. But their laying await was known of Saul, and they watched the gates day and night to kill him, right? So they kept watching that gate to see when he was going to come out so they can go get him. 25. Then the disciples took him by the night and let him down by the wall in a basket. So they knew that they was watching the gates. So they took him and let him down on a wall in a basket so that he can flee while they still watching the gate. Right. That's like somebody's looking. We all here in the school, and everybody's watching that door right there. And they saying, we waiting for Patak to come out. And we all know that they waiting for you to come out. They ain't waiting for nobody else but for you. So we say, you know what? We're going to let you out the back. Nobody's watching the back. And you can go through to the next street. And you're like, oh, cool. And they watching night and day. They parked outside. They ain't leaving until you see Patak come out. Verse 26. And when Saul was come to Jerusalem, he essayed to join himself to the disciples. But they were all afraid of him and believed not that he was a disciple. So now he done escaped perils of them trying to kill him. And now he's coming into Jerusalem amongst the rest of the brothers who was out there teaching for Christ, right? But now they looking at him like, yo,
how you get away?
No, they don't care that he got away. They just know Saul from his reputation and what he did before. That's like if you know somebody is a murderer in your neighborhood, They got bodies every 3 months. The police don't know, but you know. They got bodies every 3 months on somebody they done killed. Now they come around you or you see them, you avoid them. You don't want nothing to do with them because he might do something to you, right? Time passed. All of a sudden, here come the spirit enters into that man. And that man now is an advocate for Yahushua. So now he come around you and he like, yo, what up, brother? You're going to be apprehensive at first, like, I ain't want to talk to that man. I don't want nothing to do with him, right? Because I know what type of person he is or what he was. Right. And now he coming around, nah, brother, I'm cool. What's going on? You're like, all right, your words are short. You're not even trying to hang around him because you don't want to be caught with him. Because we know in the streets, if you hang around somebody, that means you with him, right? You liable to catch it with him. So you like, nah, I don't want to deal with him. So now here come Paul, and he's compelled that he want to come around the brothers. And the brothers is like, nah, man, I don't know about this guy, right? I don't know about this guy. This guy, he done had a lot of people thrown in prison and killed, right? Verse 27. But Barnabas took him and brought him to the apostles and declared unto them how he had seen the Lord in the way and that he had spoken to him and how he had preached boldly at Damascus in the name of Yahushua. So now by himself, nobody was trusting Paul, right? Until Barnabas comes and vouches for him and said, no, hold on. Let me let y'all brothers know something. Listen, we was on the road to Damascus and Yahushua appeared and knocked this all down, and the light came and he talked to Saul and he told him what he was going to happen and what he was going to go through. Blinded him and everything. I was there, seen it. And then now once he came to Damascus, Ananias came, took away his blindness. He started preaching right from then. I seen it. Nah, he good, right? Where now he had to have an advocate, a vouch, someone to vouch for his rep that he was cool, that he could now be amongst the body. Without it, everybody would have been very standoffish.
Yeah, I just want to read Exodus 2:14, right? Remember that Moses had killed the Egyptian, right? So Exodus 2:14 said, and he said, who made thee a prince and a judge over us? Intendest thou to kill me as thou killest the Egyptian? And Moses feared and said, surely this thing is known.
Right. Because they would have probably thought that he was coming amongst them to set them up. Right? They all apostle Yahushua. He coming up in their midst. They all looking like, yo, where his men at? Because I know he rode with a posse. They about to come in here, so they ain't really want nothing to do. They didn't cause a commotion, but they didn't want to join themselves with him until Barnabas smoothed everything out, right? Verse 28, and he was with them coming and going out at Jerusalem. And he spake boldly in the name of the Lord Jesus and disputed against the Grecians, but they went about to slay him, right? So now he went out there, different places, speaking about Yahushua. And he contended for this truth amongst those Grecians. He was breaking certain things down. And guess what? They out there to try to kill him. Right? They after his life. So now they're like, hold on. They trying to kill Paul? Well, then there was no Saul. They trying to kill him for teaching or advocating for Yahushua? So now they probably had to scratch their heads, right? Verse 30, which when the brethren knew, they brought him down to Caesarea and sent him forth to Tarsus. So now when the brothers realized what was going on with him, they helped him escape, go to another city, planted him over here in this area so that he would be safe from anyone trying to kill him. Verse 31, then had the churches rest throughout all Judea and Galilee and Samaria and were edified, and walking in the fear of the Lord and in the comfort of the Holy Ghost were multiplied. Now check that out, right? So now it says, then the churches had rest. Why?
Because Paul wasn't persecuting.
Because Paul, who was the main one, was not out there doing that no more. Right. He was the one that went above measure, above what was necessary to be done. So now that he's an advocate and apostle of Yahushua, now they have rest. Now they could freely go here and there. Not that it was subsided that nothing happened, but now they were able to not always look over their shoulder because this man was coming through. He wasn't that that wicked rogue cop that was always coming doing stuff. Now he's one of us, right? So in verse 31 again, then had the churches rest throughout all Judea and Galilee and Samaria, and were edified, and walking in the fear of the Lord in the comfort of the Holy Ghost were multiplied. And it came to pass, as Peter passed throughout all quarters, he came down also to the saints which dwelt at Lydda. So Peter himself also traveled to different places and journeyed and had certain encounters with different people, right? It says, and there he found a certain man named Aeneas, which had kept his bed 8 years and was sick of the palsy, right? So this man for 8 years was bedridden, right? And was hit with the palsy, right? Now, we know that Yahushua heals certain people with the palsy, other apostles heal certain palsy. You're going to get different instances of Peter and the apostles continuing to perform these miracles. But check this out, verse 34. And Peter said unto him, Aeneas, Jesus Christ maketh thee whole, arise and make thy bed. And he arose immediately, right? Make your bed, meaning fix yourself, gather yourself together and get up out of this bed, right? So we're talking about he wasn't going to dress and make the bed. Like you get up in the morning, you got to make the bed before you leave to go to work. Wasn't talking about that. It was talking about get himself up off the bed and now fix it so that he is now in his right mind, in his right physical state. But the thing about it is he says, arise, Jesus Christ maketh thee whole. How did he become whole? Go to Acts, the 4th chapter. Acts, the 4th chapter. How did he become whole? Acts 4 and 8. Doc, you read that.
Acts 4 and 8. Then Peter, full with the Holy Ghost, said unto them, you ruler of the people and the elders of Israel, if we this day examine of good deeds done to the important by what measure he is made of old.
Keep going.
Be it known unto you all and to all people of Israel that by the name of Jesus Christ of Nazareth, whom you crucified, whom God raised from the dead, even by him does this man stand here before you whole.
Right. So this man was born in with a certain illness, right? And Peter and the apostles went and healed him, right? He was the one that was laid at the temple gate as people was coming in and out. So now he's speaking to the chief priests, the rulers, and saying, listen, by the same person that you guys condemned before, the same man has now made it so that this guy is healed, right? That's what was said to them. But now, how did he really get healed? Go to Acts, the 3rd chapter and the 16th verse. It says, Acts 3:16, and his name, through faith in his name, have made this man strong, whom ye see and know. Yeah, the faith which is by him have given him this perfect soundness in the presence of you all, right? So it was his faith. So we just read that he says, get your bed and go. But it wasn't that was that. It was his faith that made him to be able to stand and overcome that illness that he had, right? Faith in Yahushua, right? It says through his name. Now, not to get it confused, because that's what happens out there in the churches, right? All you got to do is just believe on the name Jesus, right? But it's just not that he believed on the name Jesus. It's that they believed on Jesus, on Yahushua through his name. Because his name means what? He saves, right? So now his name means he saves. And if you are one of those who was following the ordinances and following the will of the Most High up until the Savior came, That faith is now what made you whole. That faith is what now allow a miracle to come into you. If you was rebuking of Yahushua, you rejected Yahushua, you can't be made whole in his name. You can be made whole in Satan. Satan can heal you. Satan can give you a lot of things, right? That's what people don't realize. They think that when a person gets healed in the church, when a person gets healed over there, that it's healed only by Yahushua. No, Satan can do things for you as well, as was outlined in Yahushua's test when he was in the wilderness against Satan, his temptation against the Satan or the devil in the wilderness. Satan can give you things and do things for you as well if you follow his will. All right, so that's the difference. But now going back to Acts 9. We at verse 35 now. And all that dwelt at Lydda and Saron saw him and turned to the Lord. Right. So now when they saw that miracle being performed on Aeneas, they believed on that miracle that it was done through Yahushua, and they turned their hearts to Yahushua. Verse 36. Now there was at Joppa a certain disciple named Tabitha, which by interpretation is called Dorcas, right? Which is the literal meaning is like gazelle, right? This woman was full of good works and alms deeds, which she did, right? So you're going to have synopsis, you're going to have testimonies like this that highlight women, righteous women who are disciples of Yahushua, right? Great in alms and deeds and of good reputation. So again, when brothers talk about ain't no righteous women and sisters, you can't be partial in the scriptures, because the Bible tells you the spirit of the prophets are subject to the prophets. We know that there is regeneration of the spirit. So if you are a righteous person like Tabitha or Dorcas was back then, and the regeneration, she's going to come back and be that righteous spirit. So you can't put out a blanket statement and say, oh, no, ain't no righteous women. All the women is wicked. No. So where's Tabitha? Are you going to call this woman as she comes back in the regeneration wicked? That she can't receive honor that is just due to her? You're being partial in your understanding. Verse 37. And it came to pass in those days that she was sick and died. When they had washed, they laid her in an upper chamber. So even this righteous sister fell victim to an ailment, whether it be a cancer, a fever, we don't know. But we just know that she got sick and she died. And after she died, they washed her body and put it in the upper chamber, probably waiting for her to go and be buried, right? Verse 38. And for as much as Lydda was nigh to Joppa, and the disciples had heard that Peter was there, they sent unto him 2 men, desiring him that he would not delay to come to them, right? So they're near each other in proximity as far as for cities or towns that was close to each other. So they sent 2 men unto Peter, because why? Because they heard that Peter was around and he was already over there healing people. We just read that he healed this man in Lydda of palsy, right? So they said, well, maybe Peter could do something for us. So they said, please hurry, hurry, hurry. Come down here and see if you could do something for us. Verse 39. Then Peter arose and went with them. When he was come, they brought him into the upper chamber, and all the widows stood by him weeping and showing the coats and garments which Dorcas made while she was with them, right? So not only was she just, a person of good works, they now show testimony to Peter. Like, look at all these nice garments she made for all of us. She has such a good spirit. You know how people do when they're telling you about how good a person is and the things that they've done for them in their lives and blessed them with. So that's what they're doing. They're up there weeping and crying and showing all the good things that she had done prior to her death. Verse 40. But Peter put them all forth and kneeled down and prayed. And turning him to the body said, Tabitha, arise. And she opened her eyes, and when she saw Peter, she sat up, right? So now she's dead up in the upper chamber. Peter separates himself from everybody. Everybody got to get out the room, right? So he kneels down and prays, praying to the Father through Yahushua. So now at the time of his prayer, what information comes to him? He gets up, turns, and looks to Tabitha. Tabitha, arise, get up. Now the dead body, the spirit enters back into the body. Her eyes open. She look over, sees Peter, and then sits up. Now she's back again, right? It says in verse 41, and he gave her his hand and lifted her up. And when he had called the saints and widows, presented her alive, right? Hooked her up, you know, she's standing up. Hey, everybody come back in here. They all come in, and now she's presented back alive. So that's like, you know, people say you got a second chance at life. It's not like that she needed another chance. She just now had another opportunity to fulfill more and do more good deeds. Right. Because her reputation says that she was full of good works and alms deeds, which she had done. Right? And now she died through a sickness, and now she's back again. Right? So I'm pretty sure, you know, when things like that happen, when people die, right, you are remiss of the opportunities that you had with that person, right? You wish that you could have done more with a person, talked to a person, done things for a person, right? Until they leave, then you realize certain things that you've taken for granted. Now here it is, she's back. So I know that either she herself or even them are going to want to now value their life, value their opportunity, because you're seeing that sometimes you can't guarantee what you can or you can't do while you're in your temporal body, right? You can't put a value on measure. You got to just go out there and do as much. But she was given an opportunity to come back and do more. So now, again, you got testimonies like this, testimonies in the New Testament, in the gospel, I should say, testimonies in the Old Testament, testimonies in the Apocrypha about righteous women all throughout the Bible, that the Most High puts testimonies for them of that they're doing good to, so that they're not left out. Because sometimes people want to leave them away, leave them out of the gospel or the good news, which you can't do, right? Can't be partial. You're going to tell the truth, got to tell the whole truth. Verse 42. Salah.
Yeah, even the part in 2 Kings chapter 4, verse 32. That this child died, it said. 2 Kings 4:32. And when Elisha was come into the house, behold, the child was dead and laid upon his bed. He went in therefore and shut the door upon them twain and prayed unto the Lord. And he went up, lay upon the child, and put his mouth upon his mouth, and his eyes upon his eyes, and his hands upon his hands. And he stretched himself upon the child, and the flesh of the child waxed warm. Then he returned and walked in the house to and fro, and went up and stretched himself upon the child, upon him, and the child sneezed 7 times, and the child eyed, and the child opened his eyes. Right. So that's another example of like healing.
Mm-hmm.
You know,
bringing somebody from the dead, like Yahushua did Lazarus. All right, verse 42. And it was known throughout all Joppa, and many believed in the Lord. So that now that news spread based on those widows and those people that was there, that she was dead for a period of time, and Peter came and healed her and brought her back to life, right? So of course many people would believe, but keep in mind, like we read before, just because you believe for that moment doesn't mean that you believe consistently, doesn't mean that the spirit is on you. You just believe that those things happen as opposed to rejecting it, right? But it says many believed in the Lord, verse 43. And it came to pass that he tarried many days in Joppa with one Simon a tanner, right? So he stayed there and lodged with Simon a tanner. You know what a tanner is?
And leather.
Mm-hmm. Those who make leather out of animals' hide, right? Like cow hide, lamb hide, whatever. They go and they cut the hide off, and they make the leather for people to wear as far as for clothing, right? All right. So that concludes Acts, the 9th chapter. Next week, we're going to be in the Apocrypha, Ecclesiasticus. We just did Acts 8 and 9. Next week, we are in Ecclesiasticus 7 and 8. No, 5 and 6. Yeah, Ecclesiasticus 5 and 6. Which should be good. All right. So, Most High's will, everybody was able to get those precepts. If you have more questions, please write them down and bring them to the classes. I'll provide the class times. It's a lot. Before we do that, I'll send put upon the bottom the location, the address for if you want to send donations. Checks or money orders can be made to what's on the screen. Hayasharala Kanas. Make sure any check or money order has Hayasharala Kanas, because that is the formal name of the school. I know we say the Congregation of Israel, but it is Hayasharala Kanas. And then the address 3826 Germantown Avenue, Philadelphia, PA. Right. And if those who want to dial into the classes, it is every Tuesday and Friday night, 7 to 10. The teleconference number is also shown here on the bottom of the marquee, along with the conference code, right? If you have others who might be interested, please allow them to join in. They can just listen, or they can come with questions and participate in the classes, all right? So with that, we're going to close out and send up the closing prayers. We're going to give all praise, honor, and glory to the Most High and Yahweh Shah for knowledge, wisdom, understanding bestowed upon us. This opportunity, this privilege to be in this truth, as it's not given to everybody. So we have to make sure that we are grateful to the Most High and then honor him by doing what is necessary in his sight. Most High's will, everybody has a Tawab remaining Sabbath day. Stay spiritual, stay holy on this Sabbath day. And then Most High's will, everybody be in good spirits and good health for the upcoming week. All right, with that, I say shalom, and now prepare for the closing prayers. Somebody get the blinds. Also, Salak, for those who are also looking to make donations or tithes, you could also send it to PayPal. If somebody is online, they could probably post the PayPal location in the chat room for those who are looking to also make their donations that way. All right. So with that, send the closing prayers. Ecclesiasticus, I think you said 5 and 6. Okay. Barakatha Yahweh, Ba'ashem Yahweh Shai, Asherah, Nathanawa, Par Yahagabin, Thawada Amun, La Yahweh, Ba'ashem Yahweh Shai, Ath Yasha Allah. A madwa upon you, Jerusalem, stand and face Jerusalem. Yahweh, Ba'ashem, Yahweh Shai, Baba Kushai, Shemai, Lenawa, Aitha, Yum Yun, Aitha, Shalat, Mayaka Allah, Waha Allah Hayim, Tazwadakim, La, Shemon Ayah, Barak, Rapah, Magun, Wahakazayak, Bunya, Yasha Allah, Washalat, Lanawa, Rabium Kakama, Rabium Da'ith, Rabium Bayana, Rabium Sabalanwa, Rabium Amawan, Rabium Aqua, Rabium Ahabium, Rabium Hagana, Rakanaya, Wasalat, Ko, Kata Ayamnawa, Laha Akim, Wa Akiwa, Wayasha'ala, Thum Yad, Waiwalam, Basham, Yahushai, Thawada, Amun. English translation: Most High, in the name of Christ, or Yahweh, in the name of Yahushai, please listen to us now, right now. Send Michael and the righteous powers and angels to watch over, bless, heal, protect, and make strong the children of Israel. And send to us much wisdom, much knowledge, much understanding, much patience, much faith, much brotherhood, much love, much spiritual protection. And forgive all our sins for the brothers and sisters in Israel, always and forever. In the name of Yahushua, thank you, so be it. Book on his prayer. Yahweh, Ba'ashem, Yahweh Shai, Barak Nawa, Wayasha Allah, Wabat Yasaparim, Shema, Yasharallah, Yahweh, Allah Hayanawa, Yahweh, Kha. That. All right, with that, we say Shalom Yasharallah, Shah Shabbat, Most High's will. We'll see or hear each other next week in the classes and for the following Sabbath service. Shalom.
Go, go. Oh, man.